Oh, hello there. I'm Liesl. This is my easel. Welcome to Liesl's Easel. I might have more bad dad jokes for you, I don't know. It is my birthday week, so I figured I'd show you one of my favorite things, how to paint clouds. Now, the clouds I'm painting today are traditional, just white clouds on a summery day, blue sky, the not a care in the world clouds. So we're going to be doing just white paint, and we're getting our textures through different thicknesses. That's what's going to make our nice dynamic sky here. Like I said, we're only going to be using white paint. Don't drop anything. You want a stiff bristly brush to get that nice floofy cloud texture, and a little palette or something to have your paint on. And I've painted my background blue. It's going to be one of my traditional domed paintings. So that's why that circle is there. But nice blue sky background. Now, when I paint clouds, I want a nice thin layer of paint. So I'm really trying to distribute it across the brush really evenly there and really lightly. And I always come in at the angle. So I'm using that corner of the brush first. And I do little tight circles together to move the paint around. If you look at clouds, you usually see that they're kind of stacks of little circles, kind of like a poof of powdered sugar in the sky, or a little melting whipped cream pile, however you want to describe it. And I keep these little circles kind of tightly together, and I try to keep different pressures, and I'll move the brush a little bit back and forth as I go, so I'm getting different sides of the brush. I want to keep this a little chaotic so that it feels natural. If I paint too slow, it starts to feel a little man-made, and I want to have that natural movement to it. So there's always a little bit of a circle-y gesture that I try to keep to my hand with different pressures. I really want you to see how much of an angle I do come in at. So we're just kind of dragging the brush along the canvas. It's going to be kind of a little scratchy. You want to hear a little when you're painting, because you want to have that dry brush effect on your dry canvas to really make it feel like it's light and airy. And when I'm painting big areas like this, I'll kind of mess up the spot a little bit and then go back and fix it, go adjust the sections. And I like to sort of put a swash of paint down first, and what ends up going on with thicker paint becomes the lighter part of my cloud later, and the thinner part of it ends up being the areas where maybe it's breaking up and it's evaporating. When I paint skies or landscapes, I like to try to imagine myself in the space that I'm painting, and it helps me just get the feeling for what we're doing. As we start getting more shape to the cloud, when I'm going on the edges, I usually do a lighter layer, and I'm sort of diffusing the edges. I want it to feel really light and airy. There's never a hard edge on the cloud unless you're trying to go really graphic and stylized. If we're trying to keep it natural, we want to keep it look like it's always sort of breaking apart and the wind is whipping those little edges around. At the ends of the clouds too, I like to trail off little wisps, and try to say that with a lisp, wisps, because it gives you that nice feeling like the wind's breaking everything up. It adds more movement to the clouds, really helps those light little bits kind of fly off and make it feel real. And you do that with a very just light pressure and just a little bit of paint on the brush. So really be careful of how much paint you have on the brush. You never want a ton at a time. And a good way to test, you can always practice off the canvas, but if you come in and just sort of lightly wiggle the brush over the canvas, you can get just these little just gestures of little cloud vapors in the sky. And you can see I'm just very barely dragging the edge of the brush on the canvas, just putting enough pressure to just let a little bit of that paint come off at a time. Now up close, it's going to look weird. It's going to look just like a hot mess brush stroke. But when you step back, you really start to see the whole picture together. Right. When I'm painting clouds, I like to think about which way the wind is moving. So if it's a really gentle sky, those clouds will be really flat. If there's a little bit of loft, those clouds will move upward. So to add a little interest, I do try to add like little floofs here and there, like little wisps of clouds to help keep that movement of that sky and that wind kind of keeping it in the same direction. And I know I've said floofs a lot, but like that's our very technical term today. We're just, very professional with our floofs here. I've gone in and filled up my sky with more clouds, keeping with that same feeling of upward motion. We've got the wind pushing all of our little powder sugar poofs through the sky. And I'm going to go in and add more highlights. You can see I'm keeping with the same brush stroke where I'm kind of a little chaotic with the movements. I'm keeping like tight little wiggles, tight little circles, and really light pressure. I like to hold my brush a little bit further back on the handle to keep it really light and have that movement free. If you hold it too close to the front, sometimes you get a little too stiff. And just go through and add a little bit extra white on the tops of the clouds. Imagine where the sun would be hitting those little peaks, and just little bits at a time. We don't want to overdo it. You want to have the blue show through from underneath. You want to have those nice light layers and keep it kind of fast. You want to keep it a little chaotic. Don't overplan it. While you're doing this, remember to always take a step back from your canvas, because up close it looks like a brush stroke, and further back it's going to look like a nice happy cloud. Your brain puts all that information together. Up close is your painting distance. Viewing distance is like 5 feet away. And that's happy clouds. Next week I'll be adding trees to this, so come back for some more tutorials. Ultimately it's going to be a very similar painting to how I do with my domed frames. A little less abstract, a little more natural. So follow along and see how it goes.